Good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. Streaming to you from the East Coast to the left coast and around the world on UCY.tv. This is All Things Apocalyptic with your host, G. Michael Hopf. I would start talking about Ferguson, but I think everyone kind of got the drift of what I think about that BS story. So I'll just kind of move on. I got a lot of response from that. I know that's one reason I mentioned I got a lot of response. Majority of people kind of agreed with what I had to say. Obviously, some didn't, but this is how the world is. I've got a great guest on. I'll introduce him in a few minutes, but I kind of want to tell you guys something a little bit personal. I know it's just not me, but I feel like who else? I'm not sure whoever's listening. It has the thing like as soon as you got over 40, because I'm 44 now. As soon as I got over 40, I literally felt like everything was breaking on me. Like whether it was my shoulder was going out or my Achilles kind of snapping on me one time when I was trying to do sprints. I just feel like my body is just falling apart. So I'll tell you this funny story. So here I am. I believe fitness is a very integral part and very important part to being ready for anything in the world, much more than just even having anything, just being able to have the ability to do these things. So I try to keep myself in decent shape. Anyway, I've been doing a lot of hiking, carrying my gear around and whatnot. It's like, and so I was digging through some of my stuff in the garage. I found an old jump rope that I used to do years ago, and I pulled it out. I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to start jumping rope again. That is like the best workout. I mean, it's amazing. I used to do it when I would be working on when I was doing a lot of boxing and things along that line. Anyway, so I pulled it out and like in the courtyard, I'm doing jump rope. My girls think it's the coolest thing. They bring their little, jump ropes out. They start toying around with me. And no shit. I mean, literally by day 3, my back had completely given out. And it was the worst, my lower, like my lumbar had ever been in pain. I think it was like so I ended up getting checked out like that. Apparently have a herniated disc in like the L4 area in my lumbar. It's just crazy. So now I'm back at the chiropractor getting all worked up and I feel a lot better. And I've gotten back into yoga of all things. I did yoga years ago and then I kind of get out of it. But now I've actually got my wife's really, really big into yoga. So she was like, listen, here, do some of these stretches. And I'm telling you, your back is going to feel so much better. And I'm not kidding you. There's this move. Pull it up online. It's called Happy Baby. And the funny thing about it, so I started doing this move called Happy Baby. And you look like you're a baby holding your feet. So you're on your back, your legs are in the air, and you're holding your legs, and you kind of rock back and forth like a baby does. So I started doing that stretch, and I did it for not even 12 hours. And between that Happy Baby move and going to the chiropractor like every day religiously last week, obviously besides Thanksgiving, I felt like I'm better. I'm not better, but the intense pain I was having from that herniated disc is kind of gone. But I'll tell you, there's nothing like flexibility, and flexibility is a key part to fitness. It's one thing I had gotten away from over the years. I would just go out, do sprints, do runs, do hikes, go to the gym, hit the weights, and never stretch. And I'm telling you, I think I'm suffering the consequences of not remaining flexible. So if you're not remaining flexible out there, people, and you're really big into fitness, you got to do it. I'm telling you, I know it's a combination of me getting old, but it's also just not taking care of myself properly. So take care of yourself, all right? It's very, very important. If you want to survive the apocalypse when it comes, you need to make sure that you're in shape to do it, all right? So tonight, my guest is, I've got this great apocalyptic dystopian author. He's quite the prolific writer, and you'll know why I say that. Tonight on the show, he's active duty in the Navy right now, and he lives in Virginia with his family, and he is the author of 13 apocalyptic and dystopian novels. And I have him on tonight. His name is Drew Avery. Drew, are you there?
Yes, I am. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm awesome.
Why don't you tell all the listeners a little bit more about you?
Well, I'm 32 years old. I grew up in Mississippi. I joined the Navy when I was 17, and had to get a waiver from my dad's parental rights in order to join the Navy. And that was kind of an interesting thing as far as going out in the world for the first time. And then, I started writing when I turned 30, and I'm still doing the whole active duty Navy thing, and writing books along the way, and driving my family crazy. So that's kind of my life.
Well, I have to say, like I said, just kind of when I was just introducing you, I mean, well, first, actually, thank you for your service to our country. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We need dedicated people like you out there. But I think you and I were talking before the show, and you mentioned 13 novels in the span of 2 years. That is prolific, man. I thought I wrote fast, by the way. That's amazing. So,
yeah, I actually got my start NaNoWriMo 2012.
So you just how did it all? So tell everybody about how it all started for you, because there's always, it never fails. There's, how many people have you ever run into that always say if they have one thing in their bucket list they want to do is they want to write a book. And it might be a novel. They might have this greatest novel they ever want to do, or they have this nonfiction type historical story they want to tell, that's something that's unique, that's never been told before. But pretty much everybody has in their bucket list that dream of writing a book. So when did that dream happen for you, and then when did you decide that you were just going to do it?
Well, I have to say, I think probably 90% of people probably have that, bucket list dream. And for me, it happened when I was 16. I was a huge comic book reader. Let me backpedal a little bit. My mom used to use reading books as a punishment. It was really kind of weird. But so I didn't really like reading books, but comic books were kind of, they were easily read, and they were full of action and stuff, so I would read those. And when I was 16, I got a book called The Incredible Hulk, What Savage Beast by Peter David. And it was kind of like the best of both worlds. It was comic book related, but it was a novel, so it was a real book. And whenever I read that, that was when the first inkling of, I kind of like to do this one day. That's when it first entered my mind. Of course, it didn't start taking hold of me until I was about 30, and I was reflecting on the first 3 years of my life and all the things that I said I was going to do before I turned 30, and I did none of them. So I started kind of piecing together which of those I thought were attainable, and writing a book kind of seemed like the most logical one to kind of pursue. So that's kind of how that happened.
Well, and then so you start doing it, and 2 years later, I mean, you've got 13. That's really impressive.
Well, some of those are short stories, but
that's really quite a bit. I mean, actually, of the 13 published pieces you have, how many actually are full-length novels then?
Two of them, but I've got two more coming.
Got it. Still, that's really, really impressive. Tell us a little bit about you've got a couple series out there. Why don't you tell the listeners what you've got going on?
Well, my pride and joy is the Dead Planet series, and it is a dystopian science fiction series that takes place about 2,500 years in the future, and Mars has been inhabited, and I kind of most of my books revolve around some type of fear that I have, and one of the greatest fears that I have is government corruption turning into some type of society where people are reliant upon the government to survive, and that's kind of what that series is all about. The people were only worth as much as the profit that they bring in for that government body. So once the profit margins start to fall, the government decides that they're going to bail on Mars and just leave people to die. So the series is all about. And the next series I have is 2103, The Fall of America. And it's kind of a similar thing, except it's about the America falling into a civil war and getting torn apart. And this story is the aftermath, about 50 years after the country is divided. and that's my second favorite series that I've gotten started. And the only other dystopian thing that I have out is Reich, which is an alternate history equals alternate future about what if Germany won World War II. And I kind of asked that question and then kind of let my imagination run from there. So those are the three big dystopian storylines that I have going right now. But I have plenty more on the way.
What is it that I know? I have my reasons why I like apocalyptic type dystopian fiction, as well as why I also write it. What do you like about this genre?
I did not know what dystopian was until I'd already written it, and that sounds really stupid, but I didn't know that that's what books like The Hunger Games was, or like the Matrix movies is kind of a dystopian society. I just thought it was. I didn't really know what it was. I just knew it was science fiction that I liked. So, as far as what it is about it that draws me in, I like the underdog taking on something that is so insurmountable, yet they still have hope that they can overcome it. And I think that's probably the kind of the ray of hope in all of my writing, and probably in every dystopian science fiction novel that's out there. There's always going to be that ray of hope. Can that person overcome the odds? And then some authors, they just kill the main character off and laugh about it all the way to the bank. But I kind of like having that little ray of hope where you're thinking, yeah, maybe I could be that person. Maybe I could be that Katniss Everdeen or whoever, and take on the government.
Yeah, that's there's another book out. I can't remember what it's called now. I don't know why I'm even mentioning it then, but where they're having a happier telling of the apocalypse, where people are nicer than what, say, I portray and other writers portray, kind of an apocalyptic world. I personally think that you have the system collapse, people will freaking go at each other, and I think that sometimes we can look at just the contemporary events that unfold before us and say, yeah, it's not too far of a stretch to think that it wouldn't. You kind of remove rule of law, you remove the certain order of things, how people would start tearing at each other. But I think sometimes people get they want something else out of the apocalyptic genre, but I don't know how you bring that. So do you, as an apocalyptic writer, is your vision of the future dark?
No, actually, I have a lot of faith that things will get better, but I believe in revolutions. So every country that has freedom has had some type of revolution. So I think the humanity will only take so much before they break, and I think humans are resilient enough to not just kind of go by the wayside and be trampled upon. So my view of the future is probably more happy apocalyptic, kind of like the book you were talking about, than it is anything like what I write. But then again, I always put that ray of hope in there, so I don't know. I think the future is probably going to be more Star Trek than Star Wars, if that makes any sense.
Where it's instead of rebellions and fighting, there's more of a united type of front where we're exploring the galaxy, united as a species versus ripping each other apart.
Exactly. I think once humanity comes together, we'll be able to see exactly what we're capable of doing. I think as long as there's some type of division between humanity, then we'll always kind of be one step behind where we should be. So that's kind of the hopeful look of the future that I have. I kind of hope it works out, but it'd be my luck that we get hit by a comet and everybody dies.
So let's explore that a little bit. You're referencing where you think there's hope there, there's potential, but looking at the world today, how do we get there? What's the catalyst to bring us as a species together, in your opinion?
Oh, wow, you know what they say about opinions.
Oh
Well,
no! Hey, listen. Hey, this is your time to give it.
all right, well, I'll see what I can do. I'll try to be a little bit PC, but
Oh, you don't have to be, man. Go ahead.
oh yeah, I can go ape shit, huh?
Yeah,
All right,
if you
well,
want.
the first thing we need to do if we want to save our world is get rid of all these governments. And what I mean by that is anybody who approaches a service position in life looking at what they have to gain from it instead of what they can provide to a situation, you should never vote for that person. And it's it takes a lot for someone to be a willful servant. It doesn't take much for someone to look at a potential gain and take on the mantle of something. So you kind of have to look at the people who you're putting in certain positions, and as long as you can see where the money trails going, you'll know that that person will never have the right thing in mind for what it is that they're taking the mantle of. I don't want somebody representing me who the only thing they're looking at is how many millions of dollars they can put in their bank account during a term. And unfortunately, that is what politics is. So if we can change the mindset of what politics really is and get servants in office, then I think that would go a long way towards a brighter tomorrow. And on top of that, we have to get rid of our dependency on things. The more we're dependent on other people, the more we're dependent on natural resources, the harder it's going to be for us to come to terms with a peaceful resolution for anything. If you tell me that in order for us to have peace, I have to live the rest of my life without power and a car going to and from work, I'm not going to like that answer. So I'm just going to be like, no, fuck you. You don't have the right idea. I'm going to do my own thing. So I think that mindset needs to change for both people who are just the average Joe like I am, and then as far as the elected officials that we put in our governments. And that's worldwide. That's not just America. I think we have a corrupt leader situation in pretty much any country that's on this planet right now. So until that changes, we're going to have a dark tomorrow.
Yeah, the was it Lord Acton that made that there's a quote from Lord Acton from years ago, absolute power corrupts absolutely, or something along that line. And
Oh, I love that.
yeah, but there's truth to that, and regardless of political party, I think that it can be seen. And I think if you're looking at just the United States specifically, a lot of Americans are in. They're not they know what's going on now, and they you look at anybody that enters into the halls of government, specifically in Washington D.C. It appears they always leave as millionaires. They always leave more enriched financially than when they entered into that space, and they seem to be now operating outside of the law from the president on down, where they write laws that they exempt themselves from.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, and I think a lot of people would there's a lot of people out there that I think would agree with that the system needs to be reformed. How do you reform that? I think the reality we have to always accept is that you're never going to get 100% people backing it anyway. But I think we're edging closer and closer. Sometimes I think these things don't just happen overnight; they just happen over a generation. Where eventually there'll be enough people to say, "Listen, we're tired of this. We're going to vote all of you bastards out, and we're going to try to do something." It's either we do it that way, or it's going to be kind of by arms. But I don't think people realize how that will turn out in the end. So I'm always an advocate for having a revolution through peaceful means versus through armed conflict.
I agree with you, but if you look in the history books for peaceful revolutions, you won't read anything about it. And that's the sad truth. The French Revolution was bloody. The American Revolution was bloody. And you look at the Civil War, depending on what your heritage is, you might have a different perspective of what the Civil War was all about. But if you take all that away and just look at the fact that some states decided that they didn't want to be part of a union anymore. And as soon as they stepped away from it, Big Brother kind of stepped in and says, no, we're not just going to let you go. We want to keep you. And the fact that they couldn't just walk away free and clear says something. It says that the government that you're supposed to be free of thinks that they own you. And, people put slavery as the big thing about what the Civil War was about, which I disagree. I think it was a tenth of what the Civil War was really about. But if you think about it, if the government thinks they own you, does that make you the government's slave? And that's something that I have to kind of think about, especially being in in the boots of a military person. I could only imagine what it would be like if there was an oppressive government situation where those orders were passed, where you had to, say, disarm people because they took away the Second Amendment. And I think about that stuff because I know in my heart exactly what it is that I would do. But to have those thoughts about your own government based on whatever propaganda some party is throwing out there, it's kind of a scary thing. I like to think of America as more of a utopia, but the more I look and see how things are going and the older I get, the more dystopic that it feels. So if you think about those things and where we've come from, it's almost like a big circle. And you talked about revolution and a peaceful means. Like you said, not everybody's going to agree on what a peaceful means is, and then it gets to the last resort, and next thing you know, somebody gets crazy, and that's when the first shot gets fired. So that's a scary thing to think about.
Yeah,
about it.
Yeah, no, it's you brought up a couple of things. And I'll dive into that in a second. But so these kind of thoughts. So this is where you said you wrote because you've had you write certain probably plot lines or situations in your books based upon certain fears. So these are some of the fears you have.
Yeah,
and you express them in your writings.
And I want to overcome them. So whatever it takes to overcome it. And the two big things that I write about are fear and faith. And usually it's from the perspective of somebody that struggles to have faith, but wants to have that faith without being preachy or too religious-y or whatever. That's not really what the faith conflicts are about as far as like a religion goes. But it's just about believing in something. Whenever everything kind of points in the direction of, why would you believe that? Because it's, unbelievable. So those are the two big things that I kind of struggle with on a personal level. And, just kind of seeing the darkness of humanity and just how bad it can be, with corrupt government. That's a big thing that is kind of an influence. And I don't think it'll ever get like how most apocalyptic writers write it to be. And if you read any type of fiction, usually there's something that could be considered apocalyptic in a lot of things. If you look at A Christmas Carol, that has some apocalyptic type things. And I don't think apocalyptic or dystopian genre existed when Charles Dickens wrote it. So I think it's a common thread in humanity that people think about what would happen if it was worse. And then as far as faith goes, being someone that struggles to have faith from time to time, it kind of makes sense to have characters who struggle with those things. And I kind of deal with that through my writing.
Interesting. Yeah, earlier, I don't know how many podcasts ago, I kind of, I have my own definition of what I think apocalyptic is. I think right now, if you were to go out there, you mentioned apocalypse to kind of a lot of people walking up and down the street, so to speak, and people would say, Oh, end of the world, comet crashes, everything ends, everything dies, the world explodes, kind of thing. And I view the apocalypse as kind of the end of the world as you know it. And there have been, if you look at the 20th century, there have been numerous apocalyptic events that happened. They're not called apocalyptic, but in every, I think, true definition, there was a change in how and what the world was. If you look at World War One, you look at the nations that entered into World War One, and just by that, just that itself, it's a world war. There are certain nations that entered that conflict, and when it was over, those nations didn't exist anymore. They were carved up and separated, and millions of people killed. And then if you take it another step further, you go to the Great Depression. I mean, we look at it as just a depression, but there could have been certain countries that never survived. Some people never survived from it. They killed themselves. They were living in an apocalyptic type of event where everything crashed financially. Then you go World War II. If you look at World War II, here you have a true global conflict. I mean, there was literally fighting everywhere. And the entire world was at its throat, and was at each other's throat, and the tens of millions of people. And if you were to ask people living at that time, was that the apocalypse? Hell yes, it was absolutely the apocalypse. So now they get on the other side of it now, because here's the thing: people think the apocalypse is everything ends. It doesn't. The world, as you know, ends, and then it goes from being apocalyptic into a dystopian type of future where something now this is what's going on. There is life out beyond the apocalypse. There is life beyond that event. It just do you survive that event? So that's how I define it, and that's why and specifically like in my series, I start you as the reader kind of in the future where the apocalypse has happened. Now they're living in another age and they're recounting that event. So, what now? You had mentioned early in the conversation, you were talking about, and I wanted to kind of get it and kind of explore this a little bit further, because I've had this viewpoint too about succession or states seceding,
right?
And I've never understood the concept of how a state could enter the union but never leave it. It's like telling someone they can get married, but they can never divorce. They don't. Right. I don't care how bad your spouse is. You can never divorce, and you have to be stuck with that spouse. And they could be abusive. They could be. And so there's a correlation. That's a great correlation there. I've never understood that. What's that?
I said I like how you painted that
because it's true. It is. I mean, you're a son of the South, and there's no doubt. When I talk to the people from the South, they have a very unique perspective on the American Civil War.
Well, after the Civil War, everything was in martial law, and I think it was South Carolina and Georgia were under martial law for over a decade. And I mean, what is that all about? The war is over. Peace treaties have been signed, and for over a decade, there's troops in your state that there is no law except the military law. And if you break that law, you can have a military tribunal and be put to death. That's what martial law is. So imagine what it would be like to be someone who's looking at someone that they viewed as their enemy, and now those people are over them. Those are the people policing the streets, are the people who conquered them. And for over 10 years before South Carolina and Georgia were allowed to be back in the Union without having troops in their borders. And I'm from Mississippi, and I remember reading there was a guy who was the governor. He was appointed after the war, and he was from like Minnesota or Michigan or something like that. He wrote in his diary daily about how much he hated the state of Mississippi. And there was actually racial slurs in his diary about what he thought about certain individuals and about blacks, some of the whites, the Native Americans that were there, and just a lot of hate. But this guy was appointed to be in charge of the state to help govern it. And just, looking with hindsight and seeing how some of this stuff went down, it's real easy, excuse me, to draw the comparison. Like, wow, that's kind of dystopian if you think about it. But in my life, when I face a hardship, being on deployment is probably the hardest thing that I've ever done. I don't look at it like, man, this is like the apocalypse. But I'm sure if somebody was to look at that from an outside perspective who never experienced something like that, they would think that that was apocalyptic. Uh, so I think perspective has a lot to do with how people feel about certain situations.
Yeah, I would agree. Your the covers of your books they're all great. Anyone want to check them out? I want to jump in the chat room here and put kind of a link to your books. People take a look at your covers. Did a great job with the cover art. The book Reich, or kind of dive into that, and what's your vision of what happens there in this alternative history?
Well, it started as a short story.
Without giving away too many spoilers, I guess.
Okay, I'll try not to. It started out as a short story. It was called AH-158, which I stole that from Brave New World, where they created a calendar based on after the death of Henry Ford. I don't know if you ever read that book, but it's actually pretty good. It was written by Aldous Huxley.
Yes. Yep.
And
I read it years ago.
I was thinking, wow, they based the calendar off the dude that, created the assembly line for automobile making and whatever. I was like, I wonder, what prompted that. And it was after I wrote the first Dead Planet book, which is Exodus, where I decided that I was going to try to write short stories and have them published on like sci-fi magazines online and stuff like that. And whenever I wrote it, I was just kind of thinking, well, what would be the craziest thing to do? And I was thinking, what if they based the calendar off probably the worst guy in the 20th century? So you're kind of left with either Hitler or Stalin. And, most people hear Stalin and they don't know about the evils that he did. But if you say Hitler, everybody's like, that guy killed like 7 million Jews. He's an evil person. So why would they ever name a calendar after him? So what I did was I decided to fast forward 158 years after his death, and instead of looking at him as like the most vile human being that ever walked the planet, what if he was like a godlike figure? And that's kind of how that story started. And I submitted it with no success, but I had a bunch of people read it, and after they handed it back to me, they're like, well, where's the rest of it? And I said, that's it, man. The end is the end. And they said, no, you got to keep going with this. I want to see where this world goes. And at that point, I had to expand upon it. And Reich was actually kind of tough for me to expand upon because subconsciously, things in your life kind of work their way into it. And it changes perspective a few times. And what started as a story about what if the world thought it was a utopia based upon the life of an evil man, then became me dealing with family issues, and it changed the perspective where this kid's kind of a bastard child, and then it changed the perspective to the father, and then changed the perspective to the mother, and the mother's kind of a bitch, and puts her own desires ahead of her child. And that's kind of you're kind of left with an open-ended what happened at the end of it that the reader's kind of able to piece together for themselves and determine, where they think the story's going to go after that. Which some people didn't like that I left it open, kind of open, and didn't say whether or not the world was destroyed or not. But
yeah, that's always a tough thing to do when you're writing. I personally like to have certain things unanswered. My publisher, ever since I got picked up by Penguin, they ride me about that. I shouldn't use the word ride. They stress that I explain things and explain what happens to certain characters instead of leaving them out there. But the way I explain it to them, and you might have a different thing or a different point of view. is that like, so I'll have a character that, say, maybe the main protagonist interacts with, and this character is he's with them for, probably even one of the books in the series, and then the person just vanishes, and I'm like, well, that's kind of life. They might be mentioned, but I mean, I don't need to have resolution where that person is, because how many people have you encountered in your life, specifically being in the military? You meet all kinds of individuals. You meet them one day, you're talking, you don't say your goodbyes forever, and you just don't see them again.
Yeah, all the time.
They're just gone. And they might have been very instrumental people in your life at that one specific moment in time, which could have been a day, a week, a month, whenever, that you were with them often, and the next thing you know, they're gone, and you never ever hear from them ever again. And I also, from a writing standpoint, like to do it as well, because then I can bring this person back. I don't have to make that decision on what I do with that character till later. I can all of a sudden find something that's in another book in the series and this would be a great spot for that person to reemerge from wherever they've been and come back in. And then I can explain where they might have been, instead of always trying to give very detailed explanations on things. So I like personally leaving things open-ended sometimes, because I want my readers to wonder and create their own explanation of where this person or where this world or where this event goes, instead of always answering it for them.
Yeah, I think as a reader, the more interactive the book is, the more enjoyable it is.
I agree.
And you're not going to write the book and say, hey guys, this is an interactive book, so you get to kind of decide what you think happens. You're not going to advertise it like that. But, it's going to reach its climax and come to a conclusion. And that conclusion, always the good ones always kind of have that openness, where you're kind of like, well, what happens next? And you know that the next book's not coming. That's either it's a standalone or the series is over. And you're able to daydream about it and kind of linger on that story for a few days, or however long it is that you think about it. And kind of like Breaking Bad, it ended. Was Walter White dead? Or were they able to revive him? You don't know. Yeah. And, I mean, based on the looks of it, if you're kind of left to have the final conclusion, Walter White's dead. But isn't it so Hollywood to say, haha, got you. We're coming out with season 9.
Well, I'll tell you that what was even worse, not even worse, what was even more controversial than that ending scene was the ending scene and the final episode of the final season of Sopranos. Do you ever watch that show?
I watched it when it was in syndication, and it was kind of hit or miss.
Yeah, that one ended. If you do anything, just jump. It's probably on YouTube somewhere, but just watch the ending of that, and it had people. I mean, I remember watching with my wife, and was like, "What? What? What happens is here you are with the character, and most people have seen it, so I'm going to spoil it for you. He's with the character. He's with his family now. They've gone through this major gang war. He's sitting now in this diner. And you see some of these interesting characters in this diner. You're not sure who they are. He's got this Journey song playing called Can't Stop Believing, I think is the name of that song. He's sitting there.
Stop Believing.
Yeah, and he's looking around. He's looking at certain people in this diner. Some are at the bar, some are over there. He's wondering what's going on. His family's laughing. And then Lily, the one of the lyrics is Can't Stop Believing, and then the screen goes black and it ends. That's it. That's and it just goes quiet. You don't. The music stops. The screen turns black. You just see the credits. No ending music. It's over.
What a dick move.
I mean, it set people off. People are like, "What the hell?" And I was frustrated by it, but then I started thinking of the creativity. I was like, well, it kind of leaves you. I mean, do you tell what happened to him, or do you just leave it up to the individual? Because some people like Tony Soprano, and they're like, hey, I want this guy to live. Or some people are like, no, he deserves to die. He's a dick. Either way, it leaves you the ability to determine what that fate is for him. You then, as the viewer or the reader, get to determine how you want that to end. And that's that kind of interactive thing you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, ending with darkness is, you don't know what's going on. You can't see in the dark. So if it's in darkness, is he alive? Is he dead? Is he taking a nap? We don't know. So, you kind of left having your little mind wander, and you know, it's frustrating. I think it's more frustrating when you watch it on TV, and it's like the series finale or something like that, and you're like, what? You kind of feel cheated. But I think reading it is a little bit more fun because you're kind of left to imagine, uh,
You don't think that
what different
translates over
outcomes.
though? You don't think that translates over whether you're reviewing it or whether you're reading that? You think there's a difference?
It's different to me. When me and my wife binge watched all 8 seasons of Breaking Bad, and my wife went ahead of me. So she kind of rewatched part of it while I was trying to get caught up. And so she already knew how the last episode ended. And when we turned it off, I was like, fucking shit. And I was so pissed because I was like, is he alive? Is he dead? I want to know what happened to Jesse. Is Jesse going to go save that little boy that they killed his mother? I had all these questions. And like, what about Saul? What happened to him? And my wife's like, chill out, bro. Like, they left it so that you can imagine what happened to them. You don't need closure on this as a TV show, but I was
Yeah.
pissed.
Well, but again, that throws it back to you as a writer. When you do those same things, or you use those devices, you kind of have to think how your readers react to that.
Right. And, there's going to be people who like it and there's going to be people who don't like it. And, I'm not scared of the 1-star reviews that I've gotten on Reich because I think that's probably the only book that got like the harshest criticism. But I mean, anytime you have a swastika on your book cover, it kind of says, "Hey, come hate on me." Uh, but
So how has your experience been? 2 years at it, self-published, correct?
right.
So I know there's always some people listening that are looking at getting into writing, or they're looking at, or they are writing and they're always wanting to know how they should market things, how they what people are always wanting to learn little tidbits and gems, and you've definitely been around the block a little bit here. You've got a lot of material out there. Are you exclusively with Amazon, or do you break outside of that box? And
I do both.
are you with Barnes and Noble doing the all the other kind of distribution sites?
I do both. I have some that's in KDP Select, so Amazon owns me, and I've got a few titles that are on like Kobo and Barnes and Noble. But I'll be honest, I use that mostly so I can get like short stories permanently free. So they see all this stuff that you have listed, and they're like, "Wow, the guy's got a lot of stuff out there. Do I want to pay money for something to see whether or not I like his work?" I kind of make it easy, and people can get some free short stories to kind of see how my writing is and whether or not they can enjoy it or not. So that's kind of why I use those other outlets. I can make it free on Amazon. I don't generally see very good sales with Barnes and Noble, and I heard through like the self-publishing podcast. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but apparently buying a book for Nook is kind of a pain in the ass. I don't know what would be any harder than Amazon, but they were talking about Barnes and Noble being kind of difficult, so I don't know if that might be part of the problem. But it's whatever. I don't mind being exclusive to Amazon for some titles. Others I kind of want to put out there. But it's kind of hit or miss.
Have you found your success greater with Amazon? The products that are with Amazon exclusively?
Oh, definitely. I think because Amazon is kind of like probably the biggest publishing thing on the internet right now, as far as America and UK goes. So when it comes to that market, Amazon for self-published authors owns it.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah,
and then for everybody else, you kind of fall in line underneath that. And then if you're published by one of the big publishing houses, you're in the bookstores, but you're also on Amazon. So you're you're able to kind of spread out a little bit more. And for those people, and I'm one of them, I prefer paper books over ebooks any day. I like the smell of it. I like how it feels in my hands. I like being able to just stand there and look at the cover of it if it has an interesting cover. That's kind of my favorite thing to do, is go into a bookstore and look at just everything. That's not very feasible financially to go and buy everything that I think is pretty shiny and the description is good, But for self-published people, I think they'll probably see most of their success through Amazon. And there's going to be those people that have those breakout hits that kind of crosses all the platforms. But generally speaking, I think Amazon is probably the best tool in the toolbox for somebody that's self-published.
So, for someone who's looking at writing, or someone's in the midst of writing, or someone that has a manuscript completed, and they're just deciding what to do, what advice do you give an aspiring writer?
Well, as soon as you start writing, you're no longer aspiring to be a writer because you have written.
I guess I'll define it better. Published.
Okay. Well, you got to determine what type of person you are, and if you want to, if you're cool with somebody taking something that you've worked towards and potentially making something great out of it, or potentially not really doing a whole lot with it, or if you want to be that person who has total control over that product that you've made. And if you're like me and you want total control, I would suggest going self-published. But there's lots of people out there that are like, oh no, I want to give it the best chance that it has, and I don't want to, marketing is a dirty word, so I don't want to do that, and this, that, and the other.
Well, I can tell you, I've worn both suits, and this thing about the marketing thing, you have to market anyway. You have to market just as much than you did as you were self-published. I tell these to people all the time. They think they're just going to be, unless you're like Stephen King right out the gate, the publisher's going to demand that you do a lot. You pretty much, they're not going to create websites for you. They're not going to create your social media. They're not going to post for. They're not going to do anything for you, really, except maybe line up a couple events for you. But even then, for the most part, you kind of have to do that stuff yourself too.
They'll set it up, and then you have to promote it.
Yeah, and they might. I mean, for a new author, unless you're just you're just really nailing it, then they're just not going to dedicate a lot of resources to you. And if the book is that good and you're kind of new, I think it's actually best that people start self-published. Because if your book is, and only reason I put it this way, and the reason is that one, it gives you that self-control. You're going to make a hell of a lot more money, and you can. If your book is that good, they're going to come sniffing at you anyway.
Right. I have two examples of people
like
that. Michael J. Sullivan, he writes science fiction and fantasy. He was traditionally published first, and then started self-publishing. I believe that's the guy that did that. And then Hugh Howey, who was self-published, and then they gave him like a 6-figure advance just for the paperback rights to his Wool series. Oh, yeah, and he still gets his ebook rights.
Yeah, Simon and Schuster, that hybrid deal, the Hugh Howey deal, they don't even do that.
Shit.
Oh yeah, that's they know now. Simon and Schuster know that they messed up with that deal.
Oh yeah,
because if you look at, let's just be honest. You and I know, and any other writers listening knows that the greater percentage of sales comes from digital. That's where most of your sales are going to be. Period.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at when I was self-published, 90-some% of all my sales were Kindle. Easily, all day long. It's a no-brainer. Depending where your price, and if you got the Kindle Lending Library, and now I get this Kindle Unlimited going on, people just scarf up books.
If you look at Hugh Howey, because he owns his ebook rights, if you look at the price of the paperback, like just say Wool, like the paperback, if you're in the store holding it in your hands, it's like $19.99, and then probably a little bit cheaper on Amazon because they mark down everything. But the list price $19.99, and then you look at the ebook price. I think it's currently at $5.99. I can't remember because it's been a while since I bought it, but it's like $4.99 or $5.99. You look at someone who's published through like HarperCollins or like take James Rollins for instance. If you look at his paperback list price and then you look at his ebook list price, those prices are really close together. There's not like a $10 or $15 gap in the price, and the fact that Hugh Howey was able to keep his ebook rights, he was able to put the price at a low point where he would make money and he would sell a shitload more books. So I can only imagine that somebody like James Rollins, like I just mentioned him because I see his books on my shelf. I can only imagine how hard it must be for them to sell ebooks that are excellent reading material, but it's almost the same price as holding the book in your hand and being able to smell the pages. And for somebody like me, I wouldn't want to pay $20 for a ebook when I can go get the hardback for like a few dollars extra, or go get the paperback for a few dollars extra. So,
yeah, well, that's that battle that's happening right now. I mean, now you're aware of it. Other writers that are listening are aware of this battle, this war between Amazon and the Big Five. Obviously, I side with Amazon on it. They gave me my start. I owe them everything. Actually, I owe them everything. They were an incredible job. I mean, listen, they're not the most perfect company in the world. Nothing's perfect in this world, but they're pretty damn close for giving me it. They've given me. They've given other writers that I know a platform that doesn't cost anything. And people are like, well, you're not getting all your money. Well, you're getting a hell of a lot more of your money back than if you went with the Big Five.
Yeah,
I can tell you that because I'm with the Big Five right now.
Cents.
What's that?
I said if you price it at 99 cents, you get 35 cents for somebody buying something from you for $1. If you went through one of the big companies and they priced your ebook at $19.99, you would only make probably $3 off of that because the publishing house is going to get a big cut. Amazon's going to get a big cut because of the distribution.
Yeah, the normal cuts for electronic sales with a pretty much boilerplate contract with the Big Five is around 20%, 25%, somewhere in that window.
So for $20 book ebook, you get $2. I mean, you can get $2 having your book price at $2.99 on Amazon.
I know, and
being self-published.
Yeah, no. So there's this. Again, they offer an incredibly easy platform. That's what I love about them. Incredibly easy. I'd done some children's books a long time ago, and I'd never had them. And in Kindle, and all of a sudden, Amazon comes up with this platform that can easily take children's books and just take your PDF files, throw it into this children's book ebook maker they had. It took me 2 hours, and then within the third hour, I had the children's book published on KDP. Just that easy. Yeah. It didn't cost me anything. If you go on and you look at, people sell software to do this. I mean, Amazon offered it. I just utilized it. And then they get, their 30% whenever one sells. So it's just a no-brainer. I mean, I think there's no such thing as a perfect company that exists, but they've done a lot for writers. I think they've done a lot more for writers than I think some of the Big Five. The Big Five have done a great job. They have high caliber people out there that are putting out some great material. But I think the world's changing. So, and I think that no, someone made a comment. No, they're not apocalyptic children's books. So that would have been kind of fun. So,
yeah, you should write one now.
Yeah. Oh, God,
nothing says apocalypse like children in Jeopardy.
I kill children in my books, so it doesn't. People don't.
Oh,
like
you
that.
bastard!
Yeah, I'm a total asshole. So, hey, we're getting close to the top of the hour. Is there any kind of last things you want to state about your book series and what you got coming up? Yeah, in fact, besides what you currently have, what do you have coming up that the listeners might want to know about?
Well, I'm finishing up the Dead Planet series, and anybody that's listening, if you want the first book free, just email me. DREWAVERA@gmail.com. I'll send you a PDF of the first book. If you review it, I'll send you the second one free. If you review that one, I'll send you that last book free. I just kind of want to get that story out there and as many readers who are interested as possible. I'm not in this for the money. I'm in it because I like writing. It's therapeutic for me, and I like sharing my stories with people. So I got that going on, and those 2 books are coming out. The series will be finalized by spring of next year. So I'm quickly trying to get everything edited and ready to go.
Okay, I just added your email to the chat room. People can email you, and hopefully they'll take advantage of that. I'll pop on here also your link to your books on Amazon, so people can get them. Anything else exciting? Being in comics, have you ever thought about doing what am I thinking of? Where's my mind right now?
A graphic novel?
Graphic novel, thank you.
I'd like to, but are you familiar with Jim Butcher?
No, I'm not.
He writes the Dresden Files, and it's I don't know, he's probably got like 20 books out for the Dresden Files already. But they decided they wanted to do graphic novels for that, and I was listening to an interview he did where he goes, "Yeah, I can write 2,000 words a day, no problem." And he said, but writing 2,000 words for a comic book is a shitload times harder. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to get into that. I think it'd be cool to somebody take one of my stories and adapt it.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to personally get involved in it. But if anybody wants to do it, I'll send you the manuscript. You can graphic novel the shit out of it.
Well, make sure you get a good contract. Well, hey, Drew, I appreciate your time, and we're getting right up there. I hate when the bumper music comes in and cuts people off. So, you have a website? Are you there?
It's www.drewavery.wordpress.com.
Got it. Hey, Drew, thanks a lot. Everybody out there, stay frosty.